Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all the witnesses today. I represent Southern California, and my congressional district is in close proximity to the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles, the nation's largest port gateway. These two ports have been on the front line of supply chain crisis and progressive policies enacted at the state level and now dealing with work disruption. We must ensure that ports are safe, secure, and ready to compete with other ports around the world. One area that impacts California is the illegal smuggling of drugs off our coast and our cities. CBP, air and marine officers have been asking Congress to double their area of operation from 12 to 24 nautical miles off our nation's coast, which is consistent with international law and is to target drug smugglers who knowingly operate outside of CBP's 12-mile range of route like Mexico to California. Mr. Chairman, I'd love to submit the record this letter from Congressman Mike Watts of Florida, who read legislation to help target drug smugglers that operate off our coast.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith, what other tools that can Congress give CBP to help target drug traffickers like this custom water legislation and deadly fentanyls?
Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, it's not my area of expertise, but if you would allow me to submit something for the record, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. Any witnesses that you can, yes, please.
We've obviously been talking about de minimis before, but that's exactly where a lot of this fentanyl is coming through. And I did actually, Ms. Smith, I did find some of your testimony actually from 2017 where you spoke to the Senate Finance Committee about a raid at New York on the small package blitz. And 43% of the packages inspected were non-compliant, but they seized 5 pounds of fentanyl, which I did the calculation is 2.2 million milligrams, which a few milligrams of fentanyl can kill. So they found about 800 counterfeit goods and 1,300 other non-compliant imports. But forgive me for quoting you, Ms. Smith, but it was a good quote. It's a good statement. Transnational, from Ms. Smith's testimony, transnational criminal organizations are shipping illicit goods to the United States via small packages due to a perceived lower interdiction risk and less severe consequences if the package is interdicted. So.
Thank you so much. And actually, I have another question for Ms. Smith. You mentioned the CBP has recommendations to update our customs laws. Are these areas in which CBP may be lagging other nations when it comes to facilitating legitimate trade and modernizing trade enforcement? And how might updates to our customs laws improve CBP's coordination with private sector traders?
It's a great question, and I think it really calls out the opportunities. I believe that in the U.S., we are a world leader in trade facilitation and trade enforcement. But there is always more that can be done. And I would call out particularly 2 areas. One, the coordination not only within Customs and Border Protection, but with the other government agencies that regulate goods crossing our border. There are 50 other agencies that participate in the U.S. single window automation effort. So 50 agencies that have interest and requirements. Those requirements are not coordinated, nor is the data that each agency collects. And there is a huge opportunity there to reduce cost and improve coordination. I think the second area that as a U.S. government we can do to facilitate and enforce is to recognize the investment in compliance that many U.S. businesses have made and streamline their entry into the United States so that government agencies can focus on the truly bad actors.
Thank you so much. During the supply chain crisis, I went out to the ports and we did a tour. And there are so many agencies that they are working separately and they never work together. So one of my bill actually passed under Coast Guard bill, and they have to work together. So hopefully that we can expand that. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I'm not member of Trade but Subcommittee, but you know what? I really enjoy these meetings, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. I now recognize for 5 minutes Mr. Arrington from